how important was that to him, that element of ethics over everything else?
Well, the idea was looking at ethics as the goal, right? So it's not, I mean, like anything else, we have to be careful when reading texts because there's a specific context. And what Epictetus is doing, I mean, we don't know the specific passage, but I know some passages where he criticizes people for focusing on physics or logic. And he's criticizing specific people. He's criticizing like over academic students who come here and they show off, oh, look how many books I've read, or they show off this kind of aspect. And the idea was just to remember that the final goal of philosophical education is character and virtue. And I'm an athlete, so I love all these physical analogies that he makes. And he says that like an education or books, these are your training weights. And like your theoretical knowledge, that's like your training weight. But you'd be ridiculous if you were an athlete and you showed off your weight collection. You showed off your exercise machines, right? He says these people, show me your muscles, show me your capacity to not be tempted or your capacity to be brave in situations. So it's not that physics and logic don't have a role. It's that role contributes to something else, right? So I mean, I love these physical analogies. The difference between a bodybuilder is their goal is just to transform their body, but an athlete is you're supposed to use that to do something with it. And it was always this practical application. And anybody who got bogged down in the academic, non-applied side of it, they're just making a mistake. And it's a mistake we see. I mean, you see all the time, right? These philosophy professors, you know, who are not, they teach moral philosophy and they're not moral people. There can be this break between theoretical and practical. And that's what he was really critical of.
Yeah. And you know, I think he's got a little bit of something there for everybody. Like that idea of don't show me your weights, show me your muscles. That's brilliant, right? It's just, it's so just unbelievably true, right? And he talks about the effect that having a talent can have on somebody as they're in their learning process, because it can actually lead them. I think he actually used the example of a musician as well. It's like, firstly, like you say, you wouldn't show off the instrument, right? And obviously, if you go in and listen to somebody who's just new to learning an instrument, it's going to sound horrifying, right? And you're going to be scared, as anybody with a kid who's learning an instrument will know. But the end goal is to turn that into something exquisite, turn it into something beautiful. But one thing that he said, which really hit home with me on every level, is that having a talent can often be the worst thing, because when you do a little bit of work, you get a lot of progress, and then you think that you're on top of the world and you're just the best at what you do. You get the ego, right? And that stops you from learning. When I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's me on every single level of my life. Like since a young age, you know, because I had a talent in music, I would learn it. And then because I had the talent and I didn't have to work as hard, I would think, man, I'm so good at this, right? And he had this really effective way of just talking to somebody and crushing their soul and saying, you don't know how to act. You don't know what you're aiming at. And this was kind of one of his methods of teaching, right? To essentially show the person so clearly that you don't know what's right. You don't know what you're aiming at. So why don't you start there and focus heavily on building your character? Then everything that you touch is going to turn to gold in some way or another, because you're actually doing it correctly, right?
Yeah, and a way that I like to think about it is so he has this real hard education style, and I've talked about this before. I really like it, and some people don't really like Epictetus. They find him kind of abrasive and rude. But sticking with the athletic analogy, and I'm writing a paper right now on these athletic analogies, so they're just really fresh in my mind. He's a coach, right? He's a coach with a team of people who have come, who say, I want to learn Stoicism from you. So he's going to be hard to them. He's not going to, like, you have a different goal. If you approach someone who's never heard about Stoicism, who doesn't know about it, if you just criticize them, they're going to be like, screw off. They're not going to listen to you, right? But he's a person, he's taking people who claim they want to learn and become better. So he's providing really honest, critical feedback. So there's this kind of idea of kind of changing how you teach based on your audience. And that's something very intentional for him, is letting these people come to you and saying they want to learn. But if they say that and they take on that job, recognizing that the job of a philosopher is very difficult and not sugarcoating it. You make any other, like, right, like anything else, if you can put up with it, the more honest you can be, the better, right? Yeah. And then the other point you're making is just this idea of character underlying everything. You kind of have a disposition for dealing with things. So we take character as being the most central kind of disposition or character. Your way of responding to situations, your way of responding to stimulus and framing yourself in relation to them. And then that underlines everything. So as long as if you build that, that feeds into everything. You can't be good at anything else. There's also this idea in Stoicism. So I'm kind of riffing off this. There's this idea in Stoicism, all the virtues being one, right? So this idea that you can't possess courage unless you possess prudence, and you can't possess, if you possess one virtue, you possess all of them. And Kant gives this example, which I think is a good example, where Kant says the only thing that's good is a good will, because he says, like, take something like courage. Do you want like a courageous thief? Do you want a courageous murderer? Doesn't make any sense. And the Stoic picture here is that, you know, you can't really be courageous, with courage being the idea of like being brave when you should be brave and running when you should run. You can't really do that unless you know the value of things and you know everything else. So this virtue and character, it's all unified. And I guess that's a long roundabout way of saying that, you know, I don't think Epictetus would think you could be an excellent musician without possessing character. Because, you know, you're going to have to put up with people laughing at you. You're going to have to put up with disappointment. You're going to have to put up with your own ego. You're going to have to put up with discipline. So this character is the thing that underlines everything, underlies excellence in anything. And to try to achieve excellence at something else without an excellent character first would be a very common mistake, but a very harmful one in his picture.